Thank you all for being here. We'll start by addressing some comments that have been made this week about what I supposedly said or have done regarding the voucher program. For starters, as I have said on numerous occasions, I don't particularly care for the cuts at all that are in the budget today. And in fact, we had a special session before the regular session to try to make sure we didn't have a need to implement those cuts. But when you have the largest budget deficit in the state's history and you remain in deficit, there's only a couple or three ways to address it. You make cuts, you raise revenue, or you do a combination of the both. And as you all know, I've been proposing a combination of both. But rather than working with me in good faith to solve this budget crisis to fund the programs that we all consider to be critical, we've got a special interest group from out of state that's currently misleading the public about issues such as this voucher program and kids' education in Louisiana. Meanwhile, it should not be lost on anyone that in the budget before the legislature right now, Louisiana's traditional K-12 public schools face a $50 million budget cut that threatens teacher salaries and other things that they do in the classroom. TOPS is struggling to deal with a 66% reduction, and we've got safety net hospitals in Alexandria, Houma, Lake Charles, and Bogalusa that are currently not in the budget. And certainly we're going to do everything we can to put them in the budget and keep them open. But when you've got a large budget deficit, you've got to make adjustments. And keeping exactly with what I've said consistently, it is still my intention and my understanding that as it appears in the budget right now, no student currently receiving a voucher will lose it. It's that simple. And I have consistently said I was not going to end the voucher program, nor would I propose taking away vouchers from students who already receive them. I have been good to that word, and I'm not going against it now. And in fact, earlier this week I sat with the superintendent of education, and he told me that his department is not taking a voucher away from any student currently receiving one, and that we're not cutting the number of students who will receive them. And further, you should understand, I never made a specific directive to cut vouchers. We are cutting across the board because that's what you do when you have a record budget deficit. Now, we cannot and will not keep voucher funding level while traditional K through 12 funding is going to be cut. So in essence, some of the voucher proponents are complaining because they're not getting preferential treatment, that they're having to participate in these budget cuts. But I will tell you it's the right thing to do under the circumstances, and they're a little bit late. I think they should have been here during their special session urging the legislators to raise the revenue that we needed to raise so they wouldn't have to be looking at these cuts. And no one should lose sight of the fact that every year since its inception until this one, the voucher program has actually been over-appropriated, and the per voucher amount grew at 5% a year, while the MFP in most of those years was constant. So I want to be clear, so we've got to keep this foremost in our minds. We are not yet done addressing this budget crisis that we inherited. It was $2 billion for next year. That number is now down to $600 million. So we're making slow and steady progress, but we've got a lot of work to do. So until the legislature works with me to raise the amount of revenue available or identifies additional spending cuts, as I asked for in the first special session, and we'll ask again in the next special session, all levels of state government will continue to face cuts. It's just a function of arithmetic. It's the reality of the situation. So I urge outside groups, instead of disingenuously accusing me of lying about something, which is obviously not the case, to instead focus their attention and efforts on the small group of legislators who are currently visiting cuts on agencies across state government because of their refusal to engage in meaningful alternatives that would obviate the need for those cuts. So we are going to stabilize the budget, and we're going to make sure that all of our students in publicly funded schools can receive the money they need to get a great education.